Hi, my name is Max Bond, a grateful, thankful believer in Jesus Christ, His grace, His mercy, and love. And this old guy struggles with pride expressed through alcoholism, drug addiction, lust, nightmares, and demons. My parents married after my mom found out she was pregnant with me. I don't believe they ever loved each other. Both were alcoholics from alcoholic families and families of drug addiction. Both families loved to fight. I can remember my parents had knockdown, drag-out fights on a regular basis. In fact, I remember one time my mother threw a cold cream jar, hit my dad square between the eyes, knocked him out cold. My younger brother and I thought that she had killed him. He's dead, laying in the floor. I grew up protecting my brother, who's 4 years younger than me. Both of us also grew up to be great pretenders, and we still are. We could walk out the door, be happy, outgoing, have great personalities, while on the inside we were stuffing our feelings of insecurity deep into our breaking hearts. I was always a good boy through high school, got saved in the 5th grade, attended church all that time. Then I graduated, went to WSU, became an alcoholic by my sophomore year. Not only that, I became a womanizer also. Sad how we learn coping skills from our dad and mom. I dropped out with only 6 hours left to graduate with a political science degree. In January of 1968, I drove to Seattle, Washington, and the very next day I smoked my first joint. Guess what? I was hooked. Not only that, I quickly became addicted to many other mind and body altering drugs. Well, that went on for over a year. Late in the spring of 1969, I woke up one morning still stoned, and a voice in my head was saying, if you don't check out, you will never, ever leave. So the next day I got on a plane. I had the clothes on my back and a ditty bag with a Bible in it. I flew to Michigan. My uncle took me in. He owned a farm. He let me sleep upstairs in the attic on a cot. He'd wake me up every morning. I'd eat breakfast. He'd put me on the tractor. I'd plow fields until he came home from work in the evening, eat dinner, and flop down on that cot to sleep. Those were the most miserable days and nights of my life. Ask any drug addict or alcoholic what it's like detoxing or drying out. Well, in 1970, I moved to Sumter, where I met my wife. Her and I will be married for 50 years this coming August. We have 3 children, 6 grandchildren, and 6 great-grandchildren. Guess what? Even though the addictions were over, I still had nightmares and demons of pride, and they were still with me. Both have haunted me all my life. God continued, however, to bless this crazy old guy. And after 30 years in retail management, he gave me, yes, I say gave me, a custodial position in an elementary school here in town. So from August of 27 through January of 2019, I became a friend and grandfather to many students who had no male adult figure in their homes or in their lives. I first fell in love with the kindergarten kids, and I learned that they wake themselves up, they would dress themselves, they'd walk to school in the dark because there was no adult in that home that would take the responsibility for doing that for those children. The students know when they come to school that they will receive 3 things: breakfast, lunch, and love from teachers and staff. What an expression of God's love is that for these children. I also enjoyed sitting in the classrooms where I got to listen to boys and girls enthusiastically share their compositions. We would also read to each other. I'd read my favorite books and they'd read theirs. I was blessed to be asked one day to go find a young man who was in the 1st grade and had run out of the room. Well, I found him a few minutes later in the boys' bathroom underneath the urinal, wrapped with his coat over his head, curled up in a ball, sound asleep. Guess what? I was privileged that year to be part of a coaching team to teach him how to do his alphabet, learn his numbers, where he learned to read and complete math problems. Guess what? This young man went from grade school to middle school in 2019 with a good grade point average. I want to tell you about another young man I met while being a crossing guard. He was in the 11th grade and he graduated. He's spent 3 years now as a firefighter here in Sumter, the city of Sumter, and he's leading a very successful life. God allowed me to be involved in the lives of men, young boys who will become men, for 11 years. Switch to 2010. My wife had gamma knife surgery to her brain, which caused not only the loss of use of her right arm and right leg, but she also lost control of them. Well, my daughter and I have been her around-the-clock caregivers for the last 10 years. In fact, November will be the 10th year anniversary. Through it all, God has shown me His grace, mercy, and love. He's still teaching me patience, however. Now, in 2013, I realized I needed some coping skills for being a caregiver, and I went to counseling. After 2 years of counseling, now here's where Celebrate Recovery really comes in. Step 1 is I admitted that my life was totally out of control, which it was. She smiled, told me I needed to go that Friday night to Salt and Light at 6 o'clock for a Celebrate Recovery meeting. Well, guess what? I walked in the door. Here's family. I'd never had a family before that at least I felt like it was a family. But here's people, men and women, who are broken and are willing to admit it. Jesus is changing my life by giving me purpose and joy through the Celebrate Recovery 8 principles and 12 steps. I'd like to read to you number 8 principle and the 12th step. Principle 8, yield myself to be used to bring this good news to others, both by my example and by my words. And the Bible verse is, happy are those who are persecuted because they do what God requires, and that's found in Matthew 5:10. Step number 12 says, having a spiritual experience as a result of these steps, I carry this message to others and practice these principles in all my affairs. The scripture is, brothers, if someone is caught in a sin, you who are spiritual should restore him gently. But watch yourself, or you also may be tempted. That's Galatians 6:1. Now, here's the really good stuff. Celebrate Recovery has given me the opportunity to greet people as they enter the building. Also, I facilitate a men's discussion group after our open meeting on Friday nights. I've also been involved in several 12-step studies, and the last one, there were 5 of us men, and we just finished the 12 steps about 2 months ago. I was honored to be able to lead those men in that study. The men in all these studies have become brothers, and I prayerfully believe we'll be brothers throughout eternity. It has been also my privilege to sponsor men through their individual recovery. And finally, I've been blessed at my church because I'm part of our First Impressions team. The goal of this team is to welcome people, assist them any way so that they feel comfortable in the congregation while the worship is going on. And I also am privileged to be leading a men's life group which met on Wednesday nights. Now that we're in this crisis, we have still continued in a daily devotion, sharing it with each other, and that's on YouVersion app. And this app also allows us to continue to communicate by texting every single day. We just finished, Is Corona a Judgment of God? Personally, I know that it is not a judgment. And we also finished, Christ is greater than Corona. Here's my statement, and that is, yes, God is a God of recovery, salvation, grace, mercy, and love, and I continue to pray daily that He will recover us not only mentally, but spiritually and physically. Thank you very much for your time.